Good afternoon, Sangha. A few announcements before we get started. For those of us here, please silence your phones and at home mute your microphones. We have an upcoming retreat in July. Happy July. It's going to be July 14th through the 18th, Practicing Karma with John Orr. So you know what to do if you're interested. Please go to our website and go to our retreat link, and you will see more information for registration. Venerable Panawati is offering a book study. This class is each Thursday, so that's today at 5 p.m. The book is Learning from Buddha by Buddha Master His Holiness Dory Chang Buddha III. If you're interested in joining, please visit our website and also go to the retreat page, and then you'll see a selection for book study option that you can sign up and get the Zoom link for that class. Novena prayers are occurring monthly every third Thursday. Please send your confidential prayer requests for yourself or loved ones, and this can include pets who are sick, suffering, misfortune, or departed, and they can be sent to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. Fully vaccinated Sangha members are invited to Heartwood for Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday Dharma, as well as Thursday book study. Please follow and like and share Heartwood and Thrifty Treasures on all social media to help spread the Dharma and further Heartwood's mission. Thank you so much.
I need both of these on this too?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that one.
No?
No, you're okay with that.
Oh, it is on now. Should I cut it off?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, just hold that button down until the blue lights go off. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. As I have mentioned the last few times, we're moving into a new place in a new level's not a good word, but if you can receive it, a new level in our practice. And this is a wonderful thing. Of course, it comes with something. To whom much is given, much is required. And so we have to also be able to bump up our commitment to our practice in order to not just receive the benefit, but the joy that comes with the benefit of growth in the Dharma. If we can think back to when we were teenagers, we wanted to have all the perks of adulthood except for paying for it. You know, we wanted to come and go in our parents' house whenever we wanted to. We didn't want to have to keep their rules because after all, we were grown. We didn't want to, you know, and so it goes on and on. So we can look at some things in a worldly sense, and we can understand them on a broader spectrum if we will just look and be able to make the analogy. So everything doesn't take a great revelation, you know, an earth-shaking, you know, event for us to see it, but we'll be able, it's almost like putting life under a microscope that you could just see even the smallest things. I think she's heading to the wrong hall. That even and make a correlation and it increases one's wisdom. So wisdom is not something that we gain by reading or by, you know, intellectualizing. It's something that we gain through the actual experience of living. I was talking yesterday with Kachamani, and we had such a good time, and we were laughing at all the things that happened in the store, and we were saying, you know, we're learning more here than we are at Heartwood proper, because we're being confronted, you know, with so many challenges, and mostly it comes from greed, hatred, and delusion. You know, the very things we said we wanted to work on uprooting. Well, you know, be careful what you ask for, because I mean, like if you really want it, don't worry, it's gonna come to you. Whatever you're seeking and moving towards is also moving towards you. And so we were just talking about how much we could see and how priceless this training was, because we could look at it and we could see things so clearly that we never saw before in the ridiculousness of ego clinging. I mean, sometimes Glenn will be in there and a person will say, how much is this? And, you know, they don't, I mean, the price is right on it, you know, so, you know, and we'll say it's such a, oh, that's too much, I'm gonna pay for that, and toss it aside, you know. But they wouldn't think of going in any other store and saying, oh, I don't want to pay for that's too much, and tossing it aside. They either they want it or they don't. I mean, that's just it. But it's a certain attitude that comes. So the other day, I was in the store and a person, and I was just straightening out a bin, you know, and a person said to me, oh no, I was just kind of commenting to myself really. Oh, this pink baby swing is still here. It has a soul. It's been here for almost 3 weeks. And she said, yeah, you want to know why it hasn't sold? Because you're asking $20 for it, and a person can buy it on Amazon for $25. So your price is too high. So I said, so she said, so that's why I went and I bought it, you know, I bought it there instead of here. I said, so what you're telling me then is that you'd rather pay $25 to get it off of Amazon than $20 here, so it's not really about the money, is it? And I just walked away, you know. And so, but you know, it's things like that that one can see, and I wonder sometimes how I can, you know, help free people from some kind of delusion that they have, you know, or some kind of obstacle in their eye. And you know, it's not only that, and maybe to say, well, first of all, these people didn't ask me for a lesson, right? They're coming here to buy something, so I have to be really careful not to be in my role of giving a lesson. But I mean, she wanted to tell me why, and so I was just really pointing out that her you know analysis was faulty, you know. And she actually got upset with me. I mean, that scowl and the steam that came from her head as she walked away. But that's okay, you know. And I'm going somewhere with this because of today's lesson. You know, we're in our 50 weeks of transformation, right? Okay. So I wasn't offended by that. You know, it wasn't a matter of offense, but I see such ignorance around greed and around hatred, you know, and confronted with it daily. But every day, you know, the energy of it lessens the more our energy of clear seeing and the capacity through discipline to be able to hold the moment increases. So the other day, Glenn was our store manager. Was someone wanted to come and she wanted to buy something, and she said, "Can you give me a better deal on this?" You know, he said, "You know, Honey, we have to go up on all the prices because everybody wants a deal." I said, "Well, I don't want to do deals because I don't want to be haggling with people. We have good things, good price. If you want to buy it, if you don't, that's okay, you know." He said, "Yeah, but we want to make money, right?" I'm like, "Yes, we do want to make money, and it's not just about making money to do the things we want to do, but there's a way that we do it with a certain heart that we do it, with a certain helpfulness that we do it, with a certain vision, you know, and love for our customers that we do it, a certain interaction in the community that speaks to who we are. All of these things are important, and all of these things are a training in discipline for us. It's great, you know, it's easy to be like hunky-dory and peaceful up here at Heartwood, but what happens when you go out there and somebody gives you that look or that stare that you know what it is because you've seen it for 70 years, or that speaks to you in a certain way, or I remember Kachimani, they asked for somebody, and she said, you know, something, he wasn't there, he was busy, but could I help you? And the lady was basically saying, no, you can't. She said, well, okay, but I'm the owner, and walked away, and so something like that, you know. And so sometimes it's such a shock to people, and we should not be surprised that people are shocked. I mean, actually, who is that group of bald-headed women walking around in there with these strange clothes? So we have to give them a little bit of grace because they have to get used, you know, to see. And if you see one, they've seen me, and sometimes Panya DP doesn't leave the grounds too much, but or the Hermitage, but they see me flying all over the place. Like, she just won. We can handle her. But then suddenly you look like, well, I thought she left town 10 years ago, and you look, and there's a whole, what do you call a gaggle of geese? Like it's a whole gaggle of them, you know? And they like just quipping, and they're just so happy. That's why I think of geese, you know, just flitting around. Welcome to church, may I help you? Do you need? And it's like, just too much, you know? So sometimes we have to almost wish ourselves invisible. And can we be that, you know? Can we be that? So every day there's some kind of training we go through. So anyway, this woman was trying to negotiate with the manager on something. And she got so confused in trying to negotiate and win that he said, okay, I'll give you all three of them. And I'm talking about little amounts, you know. I'll give you all three of these rugs for $20, you know. She said, I think she said, let me get this right because it's so funny. He said, $20. She said, that's too much. How about $14? And then he said, no, how about $16? And she said, that's too much. He said, okay, this is my final offer, $18. And she went right in her purse and pulled out and peeled off that $18. Like, I just walked away, you know, because I didn't know, you know, I'm like, I just let them work that out, you know, and so, but I see this, they'll even, just for the haggle, for the win, they'll even pay more than what, you know, they had already negotiated down. Like, I can't figure it out. I don't understand. So I just leave it alone. But yesterday, and this is the last story I'm going to tell about this, we sometimes get scratch and dent. Now, there's scratch and dent, and then there's things that like maybe like just shouldn't be sold. You know, I mean, there's scratch and dent, and then, so we got a refrigerator, and that refrigerator had a hole this big in the refrigerator, where the forklift, wasn't me, yes, I was driving the forklift the other day, but this already was on the pallet because somebody else was driving the forklift and punched a big hole in it. Okay, so it's on the side, I think, but it was this big, like this big, literally the size of a plate, you know, and the guy wanted to buy it, and it was in the box. I said, you know, this is scratch and dent, so we don't know what condition it is. You need to open the box and look. I mean, some things in perfect condition, some have a little scratch or a little dent, and some, you know, we don't know. And so you need to test it before you buy it, because there's no returns, and you need to look at it and assure yourself that you want it in that condition at that price. And so, okay, so he goes and takes it out the box and has this big old, you know, everything's made so, you know how things are made today. And so the plastic or whatever is like cracked this big, I mean, punched in, hole. He plugs it in. He says, it works. It's a $400 item, and we had priced it at $200, all things being equal. And so he says, well, it works, and the compressor's over there, so that doesn't matter to me. So the manager says, yeah, I agree, I'll let you have it for $100. He said, sold. And I turned and I walked away. I didn't know what to do. I said, I'm not sure I want to sell something like that. He said, why? The guy wanted it. He recognized that it didn't hurt. He got a $400 working freezer for $100, and he'll put that dent up against the wall. And I said, okay. And I just walked away, because that's not my main business, all right? And I left it like that. But every day I run through these stories through my mind, And I said, I have to work with him. I need this manager. He's very good. He helps people, get what they want. I said, but I think there's a little bit of greed tied up in that. And I want to make sure that we don't get infected, and I want to help him to get free of it, He says, I want to have a training with all the salespeople. I want to teach them how to be constantly smiling and saying yes when the customers. I'm like, I don't want them to learn that. They're trying to unlearn that, And so this is a very interesting thing, but it helps you to know where you really stand, is what I'm saying. So don't be afraid when you come up against challenges where you have to really see what you stand for and find and find your standard, and hold to it. Like I say, the person, that's a good argument. Maybe I would have taken it home myself or brought it to Hartwood, So I said, is that my ego not wanting something to go out of the store, looking at it and saying, yeah, I got this. Look what I got from Thrifty Treasure. I'm like, what is really my hesitation? If he wanted it and was happy to save $300, So it's just things like this I'm saying. So it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what you do, what your occupation is, where you work, where you interact. There is your training ground. That's what I'm saying to you. Don't think that you're going to come to Hartwood and hide out, and all of this wisdom is going to flower because you don't have the vicissitudes of life to challenge you. So it's important to really get the lessons while you're here, so that when you go back out into the world, you won't have mixed signals, mixed messages, but trying to catch the purity of the Dharma so that it can sustain you when you go back out into the world. So that brings me to my lesson for today. So Kachimani and I closed, and we were just laughing. I think we were tired. You know how you get when you're tired. You just get so silly. Everything is funny. Everything was a hoot. So that was a good time for us to reflect, because the joy seemed to be there. That it didn't seem like work. It's oh, and guess what I learned about myself today, and it's just wonderful when you have friends in the Dharma that you can have these kinds of discussions with. Because when we have friendships apart from the wisdom of the Dharma, mostly they reinforce the behaviors we had before we came to the Dharma, because those were our friends then, and birds of a feather flock together. So it's hard to learn to develop the higher qualities with the friends who think like we always thought. It's also the reason why when we come together, we start looking for people who think like we think. And there's our go-to person. That's our buddy. I always know where people are just by who I see hanging together. I don't have to have a one-on-one. I don't have, I know these are some things, and it's not secret. If you read the Visuddhimagga, taking of a meditation subject, see the teacher, the giver of the meditation object, it tells, You know, that's our cheat sheet. It tells us what to look for, how to watch how a person walks, how a person sweeps, whether they're halting, stepping forward, stepping back, and then we can know what kind of temperament they are. You know, whether they plod or whether they move lightly, whether they're slow, whether they're fast, whether, you know, when they sit there all sprawled out or whether they're like this. Well, you know, so we have our indicators to know how. You know, sometimes teachers won't point you to that, so you think they have some supernatural powers, but it's not so. You know, he's already given us the propensities and the signs to look for. And so today I wanted to talk about something that was shared in one of the classes, and I love the document. Actually, some of the authors of these documents are graduates of our first Dharmacharya class, which was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 years ago. And they were part of a restorative practice committee at East Bay Meditation Center. And you know, East Bay Meditation Center is very different than most of the centers that were part of, that are part of a particular mindfulness tradition. So I would say, like, the way I was charismatic was like at the fringe of Christianity. You could say that EBMC was like at the fringe of the Western Vipassana movement. And so they were very much into being accountable and training people in accountability for not recognizing and acting on injustices within that particular tradition, and the engaged Buddhism that came out of that in terms of social justice, of reform, and even of engaging and handling conflict within sanghas around privilege and things like that. And so they've done a phenomenal work. But because it was shared in my retreat, otherwise I may not comment on it so directly, but because it was shared in my retreat, I do want to comment on it today. Because I think it was well written, and I think it was well intended. But there is a process and a time and a place for everything. And what might be good in a particular environment is not necessarily the appropriate thing in another environment. Are you with me? So I want to say I'm not commenting as much on the substance, which I think is excellent, as I am on the timing and the engagement. Because when I bring students together in a retreat, right then I'm trying to hear and share what the Buddha has to say about things. We always have our time of what we say about things, and what we think and what our views are. But when we come together, it's to establish a plausible standard of conduct by which we can examine what we think and what we say and what we do, and how we think, how we speak, and how we do what we do. So it's just to give us some kind of a measure, some place to go if we want to go there. We don't have to go there. You know, one can exercise their free will. Because some people think only what I do here matters. Some think that this world and this life is all there is. There's some who have a more expanded view, either as he called them faith followers, or ones who know, who have been enlightened, not enlightened, but one who can recognize both by faith and also by experience that there is more to know, there is more to accomplish, and there is more to the life of the mind stream than just this one existence. So he said those will also aspire towards a particular kind of rebirth. And then he spoke of the highest training, and those who would see the fruitlessness of every rebirth and enter into that. So how can you put it into words? Even the Buddha couldn't. But the sphere of the unborn. If there is the born, then where did the born come from? It must come from the unborn. If there is the born, there is the unborn. Now we can take that to mean whatever we can kind of eke out and scratch out with our own understanding. And there's no point in even talking about that, is it? But each person will have their own view of what came before, and you go back as far as you can or as far as you want to. And if you want to start it at this birth, go right ahead, you know. And so he talked about a particular view that one can have, that they can clearly see the injustices in the world. And when they see them, when they see them, there is the inclination, the impulse to act, to respond. And how well they respond to the situation, that they make it better and not worse, depends on their own development, their own cultivation, depends on their own capacity for self-discipline. It depends upon their own level of penetration into clear seeing. It depends on many, many factors. That's what I'm saying. And depending on where you are in all of these many, many factors, it would be the appropriate time for one to speak or act. Or it would be an inappropriate time for one to speak or act. Or not only an inappropriate time, it would be inappropriate period for one to speak or act. And of course, sometimes we don't know which one of those is appropriate for ourselves. So because we're the ones that, we are the ones we are trying to train, right? We're not trying to train others, we're trying to train ourselves. So even in our sharing what we hold to be maybe true or right or proper or beneficial or useful, even being careful in the sharing of that, that we're not saying to another, this is how you should be, but just sharing it and putting it out there, and then not working very diligently to not judge as much, and then still find a way to be useful in the moment or helpful, or to I want to be careful with my words because I want to pick with a particular word that I want to use right now. But I'll just use, you have to understand the context, or to provide a point of safety, for someone, or protection for someone in the moment. So the Buddha says, in order to really be able to know or to abolish, these unwholesome actions, there's a certain training we have to take up. And that's training oneself to forsake vices that may be done by way of body and speech, And this is done by maintaining primarily sila, or, in accordance with one's status. That means taking up training guidelines. For a lay person might be the 5 or the 8 precepts. For a samanera, or one who's an aspirant who's not actually taking up novice vows, it might be the 8 or the 10 precepts, and then of course a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni additional precepts. Okay, I think it's like 227 for monks and 311 in Theravada for nuns. And what I will say about the precepts is, paying attention to, not the in the beginning we pay attention to the literal law so that we can penetrate through to the spirit of it. And when one has grasped the spirit of it, then they can operate in the spirit of the law. However, if one has not, then they should maintain the letter of the law. So you already have a little conflict between those who are more mature, who can operate in the spirit, versus those who can only go by the letter of the law. I love that scripture in the Bible. It says the letter of the law kills, while the spirit of the law gives life. So find out what that means, and find out which one you are. Know which one you are. And sometimes for some things we have to go with the letter. Some things we can go with the spirit of the law. And sometimes we think we can go with the spirit of the law, and we really need to tend to the letter, and vice versa. And so things are very complicated, when we are without wisdom. But things become very simple when we are with wisdom. The only difficulty then, when things become simple, is explaining it to those who are without wisdom, because then it seems very complicated and confusing, and they say, explain it to me, and you can't really explain if the capacity to understand it in that way is not there. So we will get really frustrated, if we try too hard to make other people measure up to how we think something should be. Doesn't mean that sometimes we don't put it out there, but we have to, even if we can't recognize someone's limitations, we can accept that people have limitations. So sometimes it's better to let people be happy in their happiness, and that's where Glenn is, And so I just leave Glenn with that. But for me, it would not be proper. You see what I'm saying? So he said, see, that guy would have went out here being unhappy, But I made him happy. You see how happy he was? And he was happy. He was like so excited. And I was like just shaking my head, And so, So we do have to be careful, but observing these kinds of things, you know, because this is the real life. It's not just words on paper, you know, or things that we Paul parrot and talk about, but it's in the moment. I read something one day. You know, most of the things you see out here, you know, they're Christian because that's predominantly, you know, what most people in this country say they are. And so I see all of these little things, and I say, oh, that's so true, that's so right, you know. And I saw one the other day that said something like, Jesus wasn't so concerned about the church, but the people who make up the church, something like that. And I could just immediately bring that over into our Dharma skill and Dharma practice, you know. That I think the Buddha was more concerned about the people who make up the Sangha. And so we have to keep that in the forefront all the time. This one who's the most important person in the world, Thich Nhat Hanh said, is the one that's in front of you right now. That's the most important person. The one that's in front of you right now. And what if we cherished each person when they were in front of us? Right there. And so this whole discipline path that we undertake is to learn how to let go of our self-grasping and to cherish others. And the more we cherish others, the less we see others as others. You know, almost you see others like a mirror, like, oh, there goes Panawati. You know, when I see somebody acting a certain way, no, because that's me too. And I know that it takes sometimes the enlightenment factor of joy in the path. I'm glad to see it. That's what we were talking about last night. Me and Kachamani was like, I'm so glad to see it. You know, glad to see it. Rather than beating myself up over something, I'm so glad to see it. And can hold it lightly. It gives energies, because the enlightenment factor of joy gives us energy and perseverance. So I see some people come in for a retreat and they are so, oh no, have no joy, have no energy, and work so hard. But joy is our strength. And it allows an easy penetration into the truth of things that you can accept. So when we think about meditation then, and we talk about, because everybody talks about, you know, well, not everybody. Well, yeah, everybody talks about the jhanas. Some say, oh, stay away from those jhanas. No, all you need is mindfulness. You know, but mindfulness was never a standalone thing. Mindfulness, whenever it's spoken of in any of the sutras, it's always attached to something. Mindfulness of this or mindfulness of that, or it's attached to something. It's not like mindfulness. You know, so it's skill in other things, not really so much skillfulness and mindfulness. And when we talk about, you know, wise attention, certainly, manaskara. But that's wise attention. What are you mindful of? And it was taught within a particular context of what things to be looking for, you know, in the moment. For instance, he taught on voidness, and because someone didn't understand a preliminary step and was trying to reach for the high bar, he had to bring him down to the one he could step on. And he said, yes, I abide in voidness. And he said, is that right, blessed one? That you abide in what? He said, yes, I abide in voidness. Voidness in the sense of what is not here. So we're always thinking of voidness like this be disappearing act or not seeing something. But he's saying, like, what is not here at the moment? Even seeing that, because we always can see, or we're always looking for what's here. But he said, can you also see what this moment is void of, what is not here? So he was giving them another way to recognize the preciousness of the moment and whatever might be happening by recognizing what is not there, what is not interfering, what is not destroying, what is not, and that helps to create a kind of balance. Now that was the teaching for that moment. We call it sutta number something, but that was the teaching for that moment, that particular mind stream, and to establish that view. That's not the all-around 100% snap answer, is what I'm saying. But we take these things like that, and then we miss the essence of it. So in this document, it talked about seeing something, like if you see something, say something. And I think that's a good adage. But sometimes if one's mind is not purified, it encourages and provokes a unbeneficial becoming. That's the best way that I can say it. Yeah, an unbeneficial becoming. If one hasn't done certain work first, to always see something, say something, can become very disruptive, very harmful. That's the problem that I have with movements and getting involved, in movements. I think we should have movement. We should become proactive and engaged in things. But all movements are not rooted and grounded in the means that we hold. Maybe they are established in the values that we hold, but not in the means to accomplish, the means by which we live and conduct our affairs. So, the Buddha didn't get so caught up in movements then. Instead, he turned people towards their own particular behaviors. Knowing that goodness has its own capacity to expand outward, the same way that evil does. It's just like the only way for evil to thrive is for good people to do nothing. Now, I believe that's true. And I think it also works in the reverse. So it really boils down to what will I do? So sometimes if one has not done the preparation, not done the inner work that needs to be done, then when they step forward to help, it's not supportive of the best end result. And so we should focus more when we come together around the Dharma on how to wisely assess our own inner culture, so that whatever I do, in this time, will have the highest chance for success, for bringing about the right result, for considering the person in front of me the most important person in my life right now. So he said that one of the things is like, if you see something, basically say something. But what does the Buddha say? He says that, and to speak to it quickly. But the Buddha says, don't be quick to speak to something. He says, first recognize that because of our own places, that our view can be faulty. What we think can be faulty. Our vision can be faulty. How we see something can be faulty. And our response may be faulty. How we hear something could be faulty. Not having enough information about what came before, when you're coming in on the tail end of something, may be faulty. Because you've had a certain life experience, and saying, oh, my life experience, that's what's happening right now, that could be faulty. But when we are outraged by something, we never think that there may be some faultiness on our side. It speaks of stepping in to defend, and there are times we definitely should. But if we haven't developed in a certain way, and I like the way that Frachan Kate de Saransi speaks of it. He says, and he's talking about going into meditation, developing concentration, developing a capacity of mind, but it not being established first in virtue and discipline. It becomes strong, but it becomes strong in an unskillful way. Because the effort is on developing concentration. And he said that, yes, various knowledges arise from jhana, but they are a hindrance to people who only have one eye, namely that they want to develop their concentration. It says, but various nimittas and various knowledges arise and are cause for the development of panya, wisdom, to people who have two eyes, namely development with samadhi and panya. So one is concentration, where the mind can become strong but it can become strong, whether one is good or not good. Or samadhi, where there is a deep inner stillness and abandonment and relinquishment to the rights that we think we are entitled to in this world. And the components of wisdom that arise together with samadhi to create the right view and the right balance. And he said, think of it like this: swords and axes are of different kinds. Some are short, some are sharp, some are long-bladed, etc. And they're used in different kinds of work. However, people use them for the wrong purpose. And so apart from the fact that success does not result, it's also harmful to the work, and it's also dangerous to the one who uses them. And so I'm saying this because when one investigates correctly, things can change, and that becomes the true vipassana, insight. Now I say vipassana is not a practice, it's the fruit of right practice. And so I want you to be careful as we start going into some of these deeper practices, knowing that the foundation is based upon seeing with two eyes. And I also want to say these documents were distributed to everybody, and actually, now that I've given this talk, it's okay. But in the future, if it's my retreat, I'd like any document that's distributed to everybody to be distributed to me first. Because when things get out of order or out of place, you know, it's my responsibility to help correct and to help watch over. And I take it very seriously. This wasn't done by anyone in this room. But that's a perfect time for, if you see something, say something. You know, we're always like saying something around things that don't matter, and then something should be spoken of, not. And that's why I know there needs to be some correction of you. So, I think that's what I wanted to talk about today. How you can use everything that's happening in your life at any moment to help increase your own inner wisdom. And then as I know that there's becoming a more intense desire to meditate, to become better, to just become better. But it'll be a right kind of better that's beneficial and that's useful. So we are creating the future now. there was a sister gave a talk, and then she was working with us on being present. We went out in the yard and we did exercises, and we saw how we thought we were being present, but how we were getting off, or things we could only hold the ball for, I don't know, 3 seconds or something. So already we were lining up, what's that name? We lined up, and you had to know the person's name you were going to toss it to, and so we're trying to get ready in advance. When the ball comes to me, I'm going to throw it to Mary, and she was showing us how we were not in the present moment. And then somebody made a comment that there is no present moment. Well, the truth is there is and there isn't, So sometimes it's just a point that one is trying to make at this time. One way of touching an animal and looking at the animal. So sometimes we can just allow them to complete that thought and establish it in someone. We don't have to try to give them a Dharma lesson at that time in front of everybody. It's just these kinds of ways of and niceties and respect for each other as we start to learn more will become very useful in your life. The more you learn, the more you have a responsibility to hold and to wisely use what you do learn. Again, I thank you all for your progress, for everything that's happening in your lives, and just for being here. I'm really grateful. Some people come up to the end of their life and they can't really see. I was reading about Vincent van Gogh and how he committed suicide at 33. Just trying to get his expression out. People did not understand. They couldn't receive it. Now his paintings are worth millions, but that doesn't help Vincent van Gogh. And so it's a real pleasure, to just see the happiness of others while you're in the land of the living. Yeah. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger.